It's true that you are as much a curator. I mean, I think people think of the online travel agencies as, the aggregator function that, if you go down far enough, you're going to hit the one-star property that nobody necessarily wants to go to. Do you kick many vendors off the platform, or say, look, you're not good enough to be on booking.com, Priceline, Kayak, etc.? Or is it come one, come all, and
Look, our goal is providing as large a selection as possible. Obviously, it has to be a safe place, has to hit certain minimum requirements. But as a person who traveled when I was young, when I was very young, and I had no money at all, I traveled and saw the world. I was in Asia for 3 months. I went through Europe 2 different summers on my own. I traveled a lot, but I traveled really cheaply. I could not afford a 2 star, right? I was that 1 star traveler, and that's fine as long as I'm able to do it safely and I see reviews, which we do provide reviews, and those reviews are by actual travelers. Nobody can put a review in of a property unless you actually were there, thereby making sure that it's actually real and enabling a consumer to make their own choice. That's something that we believe in. Not everybody can afford going to a four-season hotel.
the term busman's holiday comes to mind. This idea, obviously, if you drive for a living, you don't necessarily want to drive during your days off. Do you talk about some of the places you've been to that hold a certain magical appeal for you, for various
Yeah.
reasons?
Yeah, your point's a good one, by the way, because sometimes when I do have some time off, and my wife says, "Hey, where do you want to go?" And I'm thinking, I think I just want to stay at home, which causes a little bit of conflict at times. But because I do travel so much, but I look back, and maybe it's just nostalgia. Maybe it's thinking when I was young and just beginning to explore the world. But I look back at what was then called Burma. Now it's Myanmar. When I look back at that in it was the mid '80s, 1980s for anybody. I remember that was magical. Very, very few tourists were there. Now, of course, they have a fully developed travel industry, which is makes it much easier, much less complex, and people can get around. But you still think when you're off that beaten path and seeing something new and different that not a lot of people have seen, that was pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, and I'm sure things like the conflict in Russia, how do you handle that? When, we live in a world, obviously, where their borders do close, sanctions occasionally come in. Um, how has that impacted your own business in
Yeah.
Europe or in Russia?
Uh, It's an absolute tragedy and horrible what has happened in Ukraine. My grandfather was born in Kiev. My grandmother on the same was actually born in what is now back St. Petersburg. It was St. Petersburg where she was born, then became Leningrad. So I have family from both sides. It's so horrible. And we were a very big player in Russia. We suspended our operations in Russia upon the invasion, even though we were the biggest online travel player in Russia. In addition, we were able to help the huge number of refugees that came out of Ukraine into Eastern Europe and recognized the terrible problem that was going on there. We got together with our hotelier partners and our alternative accommodation partners, and they were willing to offer us free rooms, free or greatly reduced. A few of them couldn't afford it to be free, so that we could place refugees from Ukraine. And we were able to put up a platform. 75,000 Ukrainian refugees had a roof over their head because of the generosity of our partners and our ability to put together that platform to enable them to have a place to stay. Interesting thing, even though millions of refugees came out of Ukraine, there were no refugee camps. You look around a lot of the world, the refugee camps. There were no refugee camps. People had real places to stay.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference, doesn't it? I would be remiss, Glenn, if I didn't, because you are a leader who travels all the time, much of the time, to not get some of your own personal tips and things that you do. For example, do you ever check a bag yourself?
I haven't checked a bag in probably since I started traveling without my father and mother. Never check a bag ever. Now, it's not always that you can not check a bag because I have had some issues on some planes, etc., where you have to gate check. They gate check you because it's a smaller plane. But I have never voluntarily checked a bag And I go skiing too, by the way. So I don't. My skis are. I rent skis. I carry my boots with me.
Really? So you have not checked a bag since you were a kid, basically.
No, never. And my kids and my wife too. They learned you don't. We don't do that.
Laundry becomes your friend, I guess, on long trips.
So again, it's easy enough. I mean, I literally, when I work out, I have two outfits to work out. I'll one in the sink after I'm done, and then the next day I have the second set, and the third day I have the first sets dry.